The speculation of what Harry might or might not do has all been done before by both parents, by King Charles.
Tom Bower, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think the only reason that Harry has been castigated, as you say, over the last 2 years is because of his conduct. He behaved like a traitor, terribly disloyal to the royal family, and dumped on them. Well, of course he was.
He was dumped by the royal family.
Whatsoever. The other point,
Tom Bower, you believe that actually all of this speculation that the book might have been toned down somewhat could end up to prove to be untrue, because your point is that he's been paid £20 million for this book.
But they can't row back from all the 17 inaccuracies and lies they told to opera. So they can only add to them. And that must mean more and more poison. And in the end, this is their revenge. This is what they've been waiting for. They've got Netflix, they've got the book, they'll have interviews all over the world. They will be the #1 trending couple in the world for several days. And they're going to capitalize on it. And of course they're going to put poison. The publishers wouldn't allow anything else.
I'd like to point out to Tom, just to go back to a point he made, that how Harry was supposed to be trashing the royal family and criticising the Queen by the way she brought up Charles. He was merely quoting his father, and the reason he was quoting his father was saying he was trying to break the cycle. The Queen, Charles, him, and the way they treated their children.
But it's still a criticism of the Queen.
I'd like to point out to Tom two things. One, for some man who was so keen on facts and desperate to trash Harry, it's Oprah, not opera. And I think you should actually have caught on to that by this art. She's been on television for decades. And the other things I'd like to point out is that you also have a book out about Harry and Meghan called Revenge.
Yes, it's brilliant.
I think you should own up that you are trying to sell your book. So you have a dog in the race. It's in your interest to create...
A clip from GB News. The moment Nina Myskow begins to speak, you can feel the temperature in the studio shift. The smug grins from Dan Wootton and Tom Bower start to tighten, the laughter fades, and suddenly the truth has a seat at the table. It's the kind of moment that reminds everyone why Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex needed to leave that toxic environment. Because honesty, empathy, and independence are treated like crimes in a system built on control and spin. Dan Wootton opened that segment with his usual venom, throwing out the word revenge as if Harry's memoir was some childish tantrum. Tom Bower nodded along, eager to deliver his tired, rehearsed lines about the Sussexes endangering the monarchy. But Nina Myskow wasn't having it. Calm, sharp, and unbothered, she cut through the noise with one truth that silenced them both. Harry has every right to tell his story. And that, right there, was the sentence that exposed how desperate these commentators are to silence him. Because when Harry tells his truth, their entire industry of hate collapses. For years, tabloids like Dan Wootton's have built their careers on exploiting Harry and Meghan, twisting every smile, every step, every breath into scandal. They mocked Meghan's kindness. They mocked Harry's trauma. They profited from pain. But the moment Harry takes back the narrative, suddenly they cry revenge. The hypocrisy couldn't be louder. Nina Myskow reminded them of something they refused to accept, that Harry didn't wake up one morning and decide to write a memoir for revenge. He wrote it because for decades his story was told for him, against him, and without him. From the front pages of tabloids to the palace briefings that leaked like open taps, Harry has been a headline, not a human. His book, Spare, was a reclamation of self. It was him saying, "I exist beyond your caricature." Dan Wootton, who made a career out of bullying the Sussexes, sat there trying to paint Harry as ungrateful. As if surviving relentless abuse from both the press and his own institution is something to be grateful for. But Nina, with grace and precision, flipped that script. She pointed out the absurdity of punishing Harry for telling his truth, while celebrating other royals who have written memoirs, given interviews, or leaked details to journalists for decades. Where was the outrage when other royals sold their side of the story? Where was the moral panic then? What's really happening is that Harry and Meghan broke the unspoken rule. They refused to play the palace media game. They stopped leaking. They stopped bowing. They stopped allowing themselves to be used as distractions whenever the senior royals messed up. And that terrifies people like Wootton and Bauer, because it means their easy access to gossip, their steady stream of leaks, and their ability to manipulate the public are all drying up. You could see it in Tom Bauer's face during that debate, the frustration of a man whose so-called sources are losing credibility. His books have always relied on unnamed insiders and exaggerated half-truths, yet he has the nerve to call Harry's first-hand account unreliable. Nina Myskow didn't let that slide. She reminded the audience that Harry lived that story. He was there. He didn't need to invent anonymous friends or palace insiders. The man lived the trauma, the neglect, the pain of watching history repeat itself, and still he chose honesty over bitterness. That's what scares them, because Harry's story isn't revenge, it's revelation. It's a mirror held up to a system that thrives on silence and control. And Meghan, who stood by him through every storm, is proof of how deeply their independence rattles the establishment. The same media that once praised Harry for being, the fun royal, turned on him the second he chose love over hierarchy. And when Meghan refused to shrink herself into the obedient royal wife they wanted, they called her divisive. That's not journalism, that's projection. Nina Myskow's defense wasn't loud. It was precise. She exposed the double standards, the hypocrisy, and the cruel delight that commentators like Dan Wootton take in tearing down two people who have done nothing but stand in their truth. Her tone said everything. You don't get to gaslight Harry anymore. He's not the fragile, voiceless prince they used to manipulate. He's a man who has found healing, fatherhood, and purpose outside their control. And let's talk about that control. Every time Harry or Meghan do something positive, launch a charity initiative, speak at a global summit, release a documentary that uplifts real stories, the British media lose their minds. Why? Because it proves they were never the problem. It proves the issue was never Meghan's background, Harry's choices, or their decision to live in California. The issue is that they succeeded without permission. They found peace without the Crown's approval, and that independence exposes how hollow the rest of it really is. Nina Myskow reminded viewers that empathy should never be controversial, that telling your truth isn't betrayal, it's bravery. And honestly, she was right. Because if we can't allow someone who lost his mother to press intrusion to finally speak his truth about that very system, then what does that say about us? The same media that hounded Princess Diana now profits off attacking her son for doing what she could never do. Survive it. What Dan Wootton and Tom Bauer tried to do in that GB News segment was not journalism, it was propaganda. They wanted to reduce Harry's pain into a punchline and turn Meghan's dignity into drama. But Nina Myskow refused to play along. She stood for fairness, for empathy, and for truth. 3 things the anti-Sussex press seem allergic to, and you could really feel that energy resonate beyond the screen. Viewers were tired of the hate, tired of the smear campaigns, tired of seeing 2 good people dragged through the mud because they dared to step outside an outdated institution. Let's be honest, the British press's obsession with Harry and Meghan is rooted in jealousy and fear. Jealousy because the Sussexes are global, respected, and free. Fear because every time they speak, they expose the rot behind the royal PR machine. And people like Dan Wootton can't stand it. They can't stand that the couple they called irrelevant are still shaping global conversations, leading social change, and redefining modern royalty. When Nina Myskow said, Harry has every right to tell his story, she wasn't just defending him. She was defending the right of anyone to reclaim their voice after years of being silenced. She was defending truth in an era of spin and compassion in a sea of cruelty. And the irony, every time these GB news panels attack Harry and Meghan, their hatred backfires. Because people are waking up. The audience sees the desperation. They see the smears for what they are. A tired performance meant to distract from real issues. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan keep moving forward, creating, building, and inspiring. By the end of that segment, Dan Wootton's laughter had turned into awkward silence. Tom Bower's fury looked more like frustration. And Nina Myskow, calm, clear, and grounded,